Hey, welcome everybody. You have made it over here to Compin, Colorado. Thank you as always for your patience. We start this train right after straight out of Compin, and sometimes we go a little long over there. So thanks for always hanging out until we arrive. Today is going to be extra special. As always, I am here. I am an agent. I am an investor. I'm with the other half of my brain, Austin. We run our business together here in Colorado, and he runs the numbers. And then you see the beautiful, amazing Benson on the screen because he's decided to join us today. Thanks for being here, Benson. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. This is totally cool. I haven't met Austin before, though. This is my first time. How have we not met?
I don't know. I don't do this often. This is the only place. So that's probably why.
Yeah, man. We gotta get linked up. That's really cool to meet you in person. I didn't know that you were such an important part of the business. That's really cool. So what's your role in the company? So are you the one that's doing mostly the Compin, or do you guys split, different roles? No?
For the most part, yeah, I do a lot of the Compin and a lot of the numbers. Corian does a lot of the ACK and just, a lot of this stuff and the branding, the marketing, and dealing with other wholesalers and agents and everything like that. So I do a lot of I deal with buyers. I deal with, comping, numbers, underwriting, everything like that.
Awesome.
Benson, we might have never really talked about this, but the Kickflip Consultants, my current business, is my fourth rendition of a wholesale company. And
we did talk about that on the podcast. Remember, I was like, why did you keep renaming it? And we kind of went down the line, and just different things happen in business. So, I mean, at least you got to end up with Austin.
Thank goodness. No, really. And yeah, good shout out. By the way, guys, you can go follow Benson. I highly suggest it. And there's a podcast that I honestly didn't even expect it to be so long, but I swear I just divulge my entire life, and it's fantastic. I would do that to Benson because I trust him anytime.
Yeah, we had a great time. We've been interviewing lots of really good interviewees, guests, people from all over the investment world, from, real estate investors, wholesalers, coaches, mentors, service providers. We're up to close to 30 episodes now, I think, something approaching that. It's really turning into a cool thing.
That's amazing. And for those that might be on here and don't know who you are, will you kind of give the rundown of how amazing and awesome you are and how you've brought us the best software ever for comping? Give the story.
Yeah, well, so I've been in the business for over 20 years, born and raised in Colorado. So I know the Front Range very well. I don't know your neck of the woods out in the sticks. However, I've been here my whole life. Started back in 2001 in the real estate world. Done everything from fix and flip, buy and hold, lending. That was my first kind of role in the business, was lending money, and found my way into the real estate world, real estate technology, and Privy was born out of the problems that my business partner and I were having in our business back right after the downturn happened in 2008 and 9. And so, the idea just grew, and my business partner, Scott, really is the brainchild of the Privy platform. And, at that time I was experienced and had, some cash. And so that's kind of how it developed. But now we're nationwide, and we help real estate investors, wholesalers, title companies, real estate brokerages, people all across the spectrum, get better data so they can get better numbers, feel confident, and actually take action.
I love that. Guys, literally the man who brought you Privy is here. And I feel like in Straight Outta Compin all the time, I get Privy questions out the wazoo. So this is the time. If you want to bring those, we literally have the guy that can answer it from every direction. I've had one that keeps popping up, though, that I can remember, and I'm curious. Is Hawaii coming to a Privy near you anytime soon?
It's a good one. I don't know. I'm sure it will at some point. I look at the coming soon markets from time to time, and Hawaii's not on it.
Okay.
We have to prioritize each market because we go one by one. There's over 600 MLSs in the US. And so, we're approaching 120, but that gives us, close to 80, 90% coverage of all the major populated areas. And then we start hitting like top tier 1, tier 2, and then tier 3 markets. And so, we've been launching, several tier 2 and 3 markets based off of demand and investor activity. But I don't know where Hawaii fits on that spectrum. But I'm sure it's going to come. It's just, a matter of time.
Absolutely. I mean, when I started Privy, and I think it was maybe a year and a half ago, maybe 2 now, which is crazy. When you would go to the map to initially start and see where there was MLS access, it was so sparse in comparison to now. So I can see that the add-on rate is so quick in terms of how you guys are reaching out to these MLSs and getting this access. Because in Colorado, don't we have like 6? How many do we have?
Oh, there's a bunch. I mean, there's more than 6.
Okay.
The mountain towns are the one where it really gets kind of sticky because they all have their own little small ones and they don't share well up there, by the way. So, it's one of those weird things. But here's the thing is like, wherever we don't have direct to MLS data, you're still going to have the ability to do comping, run your analysis, analyze all your deals. It's just that the data will be similar to what you find on like PropStream. It's going to be public record, county record data, and aggregated third-party MLS data. So you're still going to be fine. It's going to be similar to what you're used to, but if you're a Privy user, you've been kind of, pampered with really good data. And so we've raised the bar on like what's suitable. And so, you can still analyze your properties. It just may not be up to date from like the last hour or yesterday. It's just going to be, whenever the county records it or when that third party listing data is posted.
So you're really not missing anything. You're only gaining by having Privy in the first place.
Absolutely.
Wow. Well, I'm very lucky. Up here in my mountain town, we use RE Colorado. Thank goodness. because wouldn't want to deal with any of the other ones.
Absolutely. It could be a nightmare, with some of those other small MLSs. And, those mountain town agents are very protective of their data because that's their niche, right? They work years and years and years to get access to that MLS. And when a new agent shows up or when there's any sort of request for data share, they're like, this is our town. There's not enough room in this town for all of us.
That's quite literally.
Hey,
Austin, you were shaking your head like you've encountered that before.
It's just there's a lot of MLSs that are weird like that. Like a lot of I think in Colorado in general, realtors are a little skittish with sharing information. I run across that quite often where they're like, figure it out. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to delve into this, guys, just a little bit, because if you aren't dropping addresses to use the man's brain that I use every day to comp, Austin is here. And like he already said, he does not like to be in front of the camera. That's one of the reasons we're good business partners. I like to be in front of the camera, and he likes to do the numbers and see how we can make properties work and crunch and all of that fun stuff. But he still shows up for you guys in front of the camera so that he can comp your property. So if you do have an address or anything, feel free to drop it in the chat. If you don't, I will pick these guys' brains into an affinity because I love them both. So, feel free to participate and drop something in the chat. When it comes to, and I would love your insight on this, Benson, because you've been in this business since 2001. We don't even want to talk about where Austin was in 2001. So my thing is, what do you see as kind of the difference between the investor world and the agent world? Because it definitely feels like there's more collaboration happening on the investment side, and the agent side is very protective.
They are. It's the whole NAR lawsuit scenario has really changed a lot of things, especially from the perspective of like a traditional real estate agent. And for years and years, there was like this weird tension between agents and investors. I would talk to investors who are like, oh, I hate working with agents. And agents would be like, I'm not working with investors. I don't want to hold their hand. They waste my time. And so there was like this gap, this chasm between those two parties. And so over the years, you've started to see some agents become investor friendly, right? That was a kind of the tag that they got. They were investor friendly or investor focused. And those agents started to kind of cross that chasm. And many of them were investors themselves. So they understood the language, they understood the lingo, how to communicate with investors, how to set the expectations of what that relationship would look like. And so it's become not as divided, which is a great thing. Now with the NAR lawsuit, agents are really having to figure out, especially buyers agents, how do they provide value in general, what to all their clients?
Yeah.
In the past, I'm an agent still, and I'm okay to say that a lot of agents were just glorified Uber drivers, right? Just driving people around, knocking on doors, setting appointments. It was just logistics, right? And there wasn't always a lot of value that was given from the average agent. They were just lucky to get a client, and then they were guaranteed a 2.8% commission on most listings, right? So now agents are having to figure out, well, how can I actually provide value? And this is a place where I think they can do it, where agents can start to really understand like how to run the numbers in a way that is beneficial to their clients, so that their client knows what a deal is, right? Like, oh yeah, this is a deal. My agent ran the numbers. I understand the numbers. They shared that information with me. They shared the comparative market analysis from Privy with me. So I feel comfortable actually writing a check, right? Signing a contract, getting an offer out, getting a property under contract, and feeling confident that after this deal closes, I'm going to have the ability to do my exit strategy, fix and flip it, burr it. Maybe it's not a closing, but it's an assignment for a wholesaler. They have to feel confident in those numbers. And so most agents just don't get that. So I think that's you're going to start to see a lot of agents transition, and the ones that are going to kind of just stay around, the ones that don't bow out and can't figure out how to provide value, a lot of them are going to find that in the investment space, because you really can be a fiduciary and become a true investment advisor, where you provide real advice to help investors make good decisions and make money.
Man, I honestly couldn't put it better myself. I think what we're seeing in panic on the agent side is coming from them not having a value proposition as to what they bring to the table. And they're having to either create that quickly or walk away from the industry. I'm talking to a lot of agents who are like, yeah, I'm done. Once I'm done with this listing, I'm done, which to me seems like a very quick fear response. And I imagine as they see it unfold, they might not feel the same way as they get a little bit closer to August 17th when that actually hits. But I am seeing, now's the time to actually bring value. And then more important than that, you have to sell yourself and the value you bring so they don't go with a different agent. But buyer's agreements are really all that we're shifting here. Like, you just need to get those signed.
Right. But the signing of that now includes them agreeing on the way you're going to get compensated. Right. And then that right there is like, okay, so they're thinking, oh, so money might come out of my pocket, or we might be able to get the seller to pay for it. What's that scenario look like? Well, what is this agent actually doing for me? Is the agent actually helping me in my business? Are they going to help me make money? Are they going to help me, not make a mistake? Right. So there's going to be a real kind of like, coming to Jesus with the investor on who they're going to work with and who they're willing to give that commission to. And that's where we've been spending a lot of our resources at Privy, is to develop more tools, more features for agents, so they can provide more data, more information to their clients, so that they can actually demonstrate value, right? Hey, I use technology. We use actual data and analytics to help you find the best deals. We can get you involved if you're that kind of entrepreneurial investor that wants to get more involved and get your hands dirty. Then come on in. You can run some of your own comps. We can collaborate on deals. We can, maybe you find the deal and send it to me for a second look, or maybe I find it and send it to you and then you verify the numbers. So there's this whole collaboration that's happening right now with our platform that I think is really going to help agents, do that differentiation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do appreciate that you're correcting that I'm definitely like skimming on what that means, because it really does affect the way real estate has existed up until this point, because buyers are going to have to bring more money to the table potentially. And often, at least I help a lot of buyers who are first-time home buyers bring very, very little to the table. And so changing that and having to actually pay commissions for your buy side, investor or traditional, can skew the numbers and actually change where real estate's selling at. All right, let's show off Privy. This is one of my faves.
Yeah. As we're jumping in here too, and this is, I think, a great thing for Austin to get involved too, is because, most agents don't evaluate a property based off of after repair value. They're always just looking at like, what's the value, right? So they're looking at as is 99% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Austin. And so when you pull comps, you need to know what ARV is. Like, what's the main difference there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the times when agents are pulling, I mean, the biggest problem that I see is more they don't really understand how comps are pulled, is my biggest thing. Like I've told Corianne this a million times. I think comping a property should be the bare minimum barrier for entry into being an agent. And my problem is that it's not even a requirement. Like you don't even have to be required to know how to value a property. The thing that I see more than that is just them just flat out not knowing how to comp, or just not knowing what a comp is. Like they'll just be like, well, square foot is kind of the same, bed bath count is kind of the same, it's a comp. And I'm like, okay, but where is it? What's the elevation of it? What does it look like? How is there a basement? Like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of factors that play into it that a lot of agents just don't understand. And it's I mean, I recommend Privy to a lot of agents because it gives them like, look, you don't have to understand it, but at least this will put you in a ballpark of, you know what I mean, of what it should be. It'll put in these set parameters for you anyways. So you don't really have to go out there and do the mental math and figure it out and compare and do all the things that you would normally have to do, because you can just look at this list. Like my favorite thing that Privy does is the list format. I don't even really look at the map too much until I find my comps. Now I'm looking, where are they, and see if they're still valid comps. Because the list, you can literally just go line by line and check for discrepancy between properties. So I think the biggest thing that I recognize is just lack of, I guess, education on the comping side of things for the most part. Yeah, it's really weird because there's, I mean, I see it with listing agents that take ARV and don't really understand as is value. Like it's almost flip flop for what I run into, where there's a lot of agents that'll list a property at ARV because the seller put new appliances in the kitchen, but nothing else has been done. And in their head, that's, this is a renovated property. But then when you actually get into the nitty gritty of it, it's like, okay, but look at the comp that you're using, compare. I mean, we could go as far as look at countertops, look at cabinets, look at flooring. I mean, look at the AC ducts, look at this accent wall that they have in here. Like it's that stuff like that really differentiates. Because honestly, like I see flips that happen that aren't to, I guess, my standards of what a flip should look like. And 9 times out of 10, I'll just kick that out completely as a comp, because it's going to do is water down my actual ARV because it was a poorly flipped property.
Yeah, that's one of those high level strategies, right? Where you want to really massage the comps that you have available to get the value that you want. Right. And that's one of the cool things about Privy too, is it shows you all the activity in the area and you can see all the comps. And then we show you the ones that we think were flipped because we have the before and after, and that helps you identify those without having to dig into each one. And you can see that they was purchased for a low price. It was sold for a higher price. Those 2 transactions happen in a short period of time, likely a flip, right? So those kinds of tools and time savers are built right into it.
Yeah. And the before and afters have actually helped me show an agent why, like, yes, this is a comp. Yes, it's the same model match, except look at how much money they spent on rearranging the floor plan, and they knocked this wall down and they added this here and this was here, and you can see all that in these before and after pictures, and it's actually helped because a lot of agents, the other thing is they don't really understand investment unless they're investors. Like they don't understand what actually goes into it, what needs to be done. They don't have the vision of walking into this little boxy, choppy home. And I mean, in Denver, turning this 1,000 square foot house into $1 million property. I mean, it's not easy to do. And if you're selling 1,000 square feet for $1 million, it better look right. You know what I mean? Like it's got to be some serious quality.
Well, there's multiple different levels too, right? And that's what the photos, like you were alluding to it, is like you could flip a house and come out of it with a rental grade rehab. You could have used Formica countertops, you know, stuff from Home Depot, you know, maybe linoleum on the floor or just like the luxury vinyl planking. And then, you know, that is a fix and flip. It's just, you know, maybe that's what was adequate for that neighborhood. But then somebody else flips a house and they do, you know, granite countertops and crown molding, and they're using, you know, a sub-zero freezer and Viking appliances. And so it's like a totally different level of build, but that could yield, you know, 20% more value just by spending a little bit more on the finishes and the quality of the construction and making sure it's done right.
100%. And to dig a little deeper on that though, because like you said, the neighborhood may not call for that. Right. So like I see a lot of people because I comp deals for a lot of other wholesalers, and they'll send me stuff and be like, yeah, but these flips that are happening, they're not real good quality. So what if I come in there, you know, put all the bells and whistles on this house? You think I could bump it 20%? And it's like, well, no, because if the whole neighborhood is selling in the $600,000 to $700,000 range with this mediocre flip, it's very unlikely that you're going to, you know, add $140,000 onto that by doing a better flip, because nothing else in the neighborhood looks like this. You know what I mean? Like location is very important, because the exact same thing could be said on the flip side of it. If you're in a very luxury, super high-end flip neighborhood and you come try to paint the pig, I mean, you're going to get more investors coming at you than homeowners.
Yep. It's true. And you might get a little bit of a bump. Like if you did a little bit higher quality of a construction project for a flip, you're going to get a slight bump, but it's not going to be proportionally higher. You're not going to get your full money out of it if you overbuild, but over time that can push the value of the neighborhood up. But you don't want to be the trailblazer and be the first one that does it. Like that first person that goes and flips in a neighborhood and there's no comps yet, like they're not going to get the maximum value out of that house because the comps don't exist. So you can start to push it up over time, but it's risky.
Yeah, and from the wholesale standpoint, I mean, a lot of buyers, unless you have those super high level buyers that are okay with trying to change a neighborhood and okay trying to be the trailblazer, like a Jamil. Jamil does things like that all the time, where he'll go into neighborhoods and set comps because he knows what he's doing. You know what I mean? But a lot of the buyers that you're going to sell to, you're not, 9 times out of 10, if you're a wholesaler, you're not selling to a Jamil Damji. You're selling to mom and pop flippers, because 1, they pay a little more, and 2, if you're trying to convince them of that play, a lot of times they're going to be like, hey, but look at the neighborhood. Like, why would I come in here and spend $50,000 more on my rehab when I can just do what everybody else did and stick with the herd?
Yeah. Corinne, I think you wanted to add something.
Well, the only part that I wanted to add was that in Privy, I think one of the things that I love is it actually allows Austin and I to have more built out conversations and make sure that I give the right kind of deals to him to even spend the time on. Because I can very quickly look on Privy, see the map, and know that the asking price is lower than at least some of the higher numbers I'm seeing. And that's a trigger for me to pass off to Austin. If the asking price that I'm seeing immediately in that field on the map is the same as the sale prices, then I know that they're trying to list and push towards ARV, and it wouldn't be worth the time for Austin. But the amount of times we're having this conversation about a property as to where someone could take it versus where they're most likely going to take it, and using Privy to kind of see those before and afters of multiple different properties every day. I mean, we have that conversation every day where I'm like, yeah, but what if we pushed it up? And honestly, that's why I love having a partner like him, is because we can kind of bounce those things back and forth to find the right sales pitch and the right kind of buyer that we would even take a property to. And without Privy, I don't think that would happen, because you could get lost in Zillow, like so lost. I would never be able to make sure and narrow that down before I pass to Austin.
Oh yeah. There's a big misconception about data in comping. Like on the agent side, you know, Austin was just saying his experience with agents, like most of them don't even understand, you know, basic comping from just like a normal listing, let alone after repair value. And there's I think a misconception in the industry about what the MLS is really for. Like it isn't designed for comping. Like it's designed for agents to go put properties in their listings, you know, put all of the information there, and then, you know, post that listing so that other agents can see it. And then they can find potential properties for their clients. And that's really all it was designed for. Then at some point, they said, okay, well, now we're going to do syndications, right? So we're going to push these listings to Zillow and Trulia and, you know, Redfin and some of these other platforms. And, you know, now you're seeing listings there. And then eventually the National Association of Realtors and realtors were forced to put their sold properties back into the MLS. So that is something that's required by their license. And that's the only reason we really have comps is because agents are required to do that or they get fined. Otherwise, we wouldn't have comping data. So that's what it was designed for. So comping from an agent perspective, it's still a very manual process. You still have to come in and create your criteria, understand the whole comping process, draw your zones, and make sure you're not crossing over major roads, and, you know, take into consideration if the house is on a major street compared to comps that are in the neighborhoods and all that stuff that Austin was talking about. They still have to understand that. So Jamil's got his comping guidelines that he
Appraisal
uses.
rules.
Appraisal rules, right? Which I think is brilliant because those rules come from appraisers, right?
Exactly.
And that's what he's teaching the, you know, Astro community, which is just amazing. Why shouldn't they use the same process that an appraiser does, right? But funny enough, like Austin was saying, most agents don't even know that.
Yeah, like I had an agent tell me recently on a deal that we're working, it backs a freeway. And in the agent's brain, that's a plus because, oh, you're right there next to the freeway. And I'm like, okay, but an appraiser, regardless, the homeowner could love it, you could love it, I could love it. An appraiser is going to be like, that drops value because now you have road noise. You have to deal with the fact that the freeway is right there. So there's likely garbage on the other side of your fence from people throwing stuff out the window. There's a trail, like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff that plays into it that I don't know. I really just wish it was taught better to agents. I think it would make real estate better. Like the whole NAR thing. I think agents not knowing how to value property is a bigger talking point than buyer commission, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Huge. Let's see it in action. I want to show off just a little bit of Privy, and then we'll jump into an address, and we probably can talk about one address this whole time because that's how we are. All right, guys. So this is your entry into Privy, and of course, we're going to be headed towards Colorado. But I do want to show you guys that everywhere where the blue is where you have access to that MLS data. Benson's worked hard to make sure that this map lights up blue and gives you that access. And like he said earlier, even if you're not seeing the blue, it doesn't mean that this can't be a helpful tool. It just means that eventually, hopefully, it continues to add additional data. Let's go to, sorry, I had to jump back and forth.
So you got one that you're analyzing right now? Something that's good on your end, or are you just finding something a random?
I think Renee dropped a couple.
Yeah, this one comes from Renee, and
oh, cool.
It's been on the market for 3 days. And speaking of backing to busy roads, this is kind of perfect for exactly what we were talking about. Thank you, Renee. What I love immediately about Privy is that it's giving me all the pertinent information immediately. And what's funny is, yeah, even under my MLS, if I go in there, it's not giving it this way. I would have to click at least 3 to 4 times and use brain energy to even get to the photos. And immediately I know where it is. I know exactly what size and what value it can potentially bring. And then I can look inside. From the outside, I would say this is perfectly ugly in every way.
Another thing that I really like about Privy versus other softwares is within, like if you take PropStream or Batch or any of these, and I grab a link, like if I pull this address up and I grab the link, not everybody can open it if they don't have access. In Privy, if you send a link, anybody can open it and see the property. You just can't get into the nitty gritty like comping and back end and all the cool stuff that it does without access. But at least I can show somebody a property that I'm talking about without them having to buy in per se. I can share it freely to anybody.
Yeah, that is great for collaborating. Like you guys, sharing deals between each other, a wholesaler to a wholesaler, or, an agent can send it to a client. They don't have to be, a Privy user. Another couple use cases is like sometimes you want to send it to your lender to see like how much money they would lend on a property. The lender can open it up and the lender can see the comps and see, this looks like a good deal. Like send it into underwriting, right? Because a lot of lenders are bogged down by non-deals that people are just sending their way.
Yeah.
Here it is, easy access to I-70, I-25, and 225, because it's right there. So they are pushing on that, but I would see that as a negative with how close it is to that exit. Let's see the comparables. All right, so one of the first things that comes to mind for me in making sure that I'm sticking to Jamil's appraisal rules is that these comps are pretty much automatically not the kinds of comps that I want to use because I'm on this side of 70. Mm-hmm. But I might click on it just to see because we are kind of close. And I happen to know this neighborhood in particular does extend to this side.
But I was just about to say there is some caveat there because if it's an underpass, it may just be one neighborhood that flows.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go to my favorite, all and investor only. See what's popping. All right, what's the 625? This, Benson, this is my all-time best favoritist thing that Privy does is that I can see where they purchased it before and where they sold it like that. Because if I'm talking to somebody on the phone and they're in this area and they're like, oh, well, we really want to be at 420. Well, I know automatically that we're not talking the same numbers unless it is flipped. So 3-bedroom, 1 bath.
I like the square foot. I like just how it shows the before and after of everything right there because, like, for example, that 420, I can tell right away what they did there is probably add more space into the garage because the square footage dropped. So you can see that immediately and say, okay, well, maybe square footage isn't the most important thing in this neighborhood. Because if it was, why would a flipper come in there and chop off 200 square feet?
Right. Yeah, I like that. Looking into, what could have changed the square footage. Sometimes it's just the difference between what's actually on public records and what the agent measures, right? Or vice versa. There's a lot of activity, flip activity in this neighborhood. These ones just haven't sold yet, but look at those days on market.
Well, and that's what I'm noting on this one. This one sat way too long for a flipper. I'm sure they're currently kicking themselves given that they did all the extra work to add an additional bedroom in this little tiny place, and they're still sitting on this property. But luckily ours is not that small. Thank goodness. Let's go back to solds. I'm going to go to just all and see what the regular sold activity is. All right. So, and actually remind me if I go to, here's the button. Let's just see what Privy pulls automatically. If I go to reset. These 3. A little bit too old.
Yeah, the main reason why, so we match up basements right out of the gates. So the subject property has a basement. So we're looking for other houses that have basements. So there are some comps that have similar square footage that we're not showing that don't have basements that could be viable comparables. But that's the cool part about the settings button that you clicked earlier is you can massage this data and find properties that you can still use that just aren't what we would be like our first match. When there's less data, you have to start to loosen the strictness of the criteria to bring in more data that you can use to figure out what the as is or after repair value is.
And I like that it goes off basements first because, again, back to the agents not being educated properly, is a lot of times they'll see a basement and just throw it in with the house square footage and don't specify about like where said square footage is, because if it's not finished, you can't count it. And a lot of agents don't, like, they just are like, well, it's down there. You could go in there. You could walk around down there. I don't see why not. But in privy, even if the agent puts, let's say 2,000 square feet, but 1,000 of it is in the basement, privy will show you the 2,000 square feet, but it'll also show you, okay, but the 1,000 of it is in the basement. So now all I have to do is go check, public records or NAR to see what was actually recorded as square footage.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super helpful. But like you said, right out of the box, you're going to get some data that you can use. Even if you didn't know anything, you'd be like, oh yeah, I can figure out the value on this, even if you have zero knowledge about comping, because it really is more of an art than it is a science, right? It's you learn it over time. It's reps, right? I don't know how many hours you put into comping, Austin, but it's probably thousands and thousands of hours.
I really like 425 as our after repair value here. And I think it's kind of backed up by this 420, which does have one less bedroom than we have. But let's see where this one's located on the map.
Do we have a garage?
Ooh, that's a good question. Let's look at our photos.
Oh, it's not listed.
It's not listed, but I think I see a carport in the, 1 second. Yeah, just a carport, no garage. Does my 425 have a garage?
Yeah, it has a 2-car.
Nuh-uh.
Well, I don't know, because sometimes agents put garage as parking spaces. So could just be a big carport.
It could. Let's see here.
What's up with that 625? Did you disqualify that one for some reason?
I think real quick on this one, I think this is too small of a lot to squeeze in anything we can't see here. So I would say no to a garage. Oh, wait. Is this a basement? That's a basement. Yeah.
Detached. Is that not a garage in the back?
This is a shed. Are you talking about this?
No, to the left. Or is that a different house?
That's a different house. I think this is the backyard. Well, so what they're probably saying is this gate opens up and they have 2 parking spots right here.
Okay. Then I mean, I agree with the 425, but really quick, I want to show everybody something. If you go back to the list, the immediate thing that I do when I look at these is I go to the sold date, go to the top and click it. And now it's in chronological order. So I'm looking at everything most recent first.
This is so useful because you can see trends that way. If you start to see a neighborhood increase in price, thank you for the reminder that it does that. So now
what do you think is more important? The timeliness of the comp, like how recent it was, or how close it is?
I think it depends. If it's within the same neighborhood, I want recent. But if, say that there's one in this neighborhood just over and that sold last week, but there's one that sold 2 months ago that's next door, I want proximity. So it really depends on like what we're talking about. Like the neighborhood that I live in, for example, is huge, but it's all one neighborhood, but it's like 16 blocks long, or not blocks, but streets. So there could be a comp that's quarter mile that way that's still in the same neighborhood, whereas I live at the edge of the neighborhood, so there could be one that's 0.1 miles away that's a completely different neighborhood. So If it's within the neighborhood, I always still want recent, but I would say if you have to go back, you want to be within the same neighborhood before you time travel, before you actually travel.
Got it. And that's in Jamil's appraisal rules too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, okay. So one of the reasons I think this 625 is disqualified is outside of the additional 400 square feet, which Austin and I prefer to only adjust if it's 250 square feet, plus or minus. If it goes over that, we don't really want to be doing any like heavy calculations or adjustments because that gets a little harder to kind of justify. So there is that, but the other aspect is that it's a 1950 and we're in 1925. And the difference between the 20s and the transition that happens in the 40s into the 50s is pretty considerable on the amount of work that somebody might need to do. Would you agree with that, Austin, or disagree?
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're before about 1920, anything like 1905, 1910, anything past that, it doesn't really matter. Like you could take a 1890 and a 1910, there was no real difference in technology or materials or anything that they were using during that time period. So it doesn't make a huge difference. I mean, it's like right now, like if I was comping out a house and one was built in 2008 and the other one was built in 1996, it's technically outside of the 10-year mark, but there wasn't much advancement that happened between there in terms of what they're putting inside of houses. I'm talking about under the walls because the interior doesn't matter much, but I mean like plumbing, electric, HVAC, like those kinds of things weren't very different in that gap. So yeah, I agree. I think the older you get, the less important time becomes up until a certain point. And I think that point is about the 40s.
This is a pretty good comp. It's older than ours. Obviously, we're in the 20s, but it's in the 90s. So the 1890s. So to some extent, that's kind of aligning with what you're talking about. The 20s are closer to the 90s than they are the 50s.
And also, if you're going backwards, it doesn't matter. So like if you're comping a 1980 house and you see a comp that's a 1940 house, unless that 1940 house is historical, doesn't matter because worst case scenario, you have better materials than they did because it's that much far forward. You just don't want to go, 1980s house, 2010 house, because now we're talking about something completely different.
Absolutely.
Can you re-say that, Austin? I think that's really important.
So if you're,
I think it's a really key thing for people listening.
So if you're looking at year build, the 10-year rule, in my opinion, only matters if it's newer. If it's older, you can go much farther back because it doesn't matter as much. There's no chance of it being newer stuff in those walls that would increase the value there versus yours. Newer is always better. That's why you don't want to go way newer. But if you're going way older, I don't think it matters as much. Again, unless it's historical where it's like you see 1890. I don't think this particular neighborhood is a historical district, but in Denver, there is areas where it's a historical district and this house is historical. To some homeowners, that adds value.
Got it. But in all cases, though, you don't want to ignore true comps that are within the 10-year mark 100%. That are recent, just so you can find something that's older or newer that gives you a better value. Like 100%. A lot of people will get blind to data that doesn't help them, right? And then they want to see the stuff that supports the value they're going for, and they'll make they'll compromise on the true appraisal rules just so they can get a value that they need.
Yeah, and something I say all the time is if you have to convince yourself that it's a good deal, it's probably not.
Yeah.
Because as good as you are at convincing yourself, you're not going to be able to convince a buyer to buy anything. They have to believe in the deal, and in order for you to sell the deal, you have to believe in the deal.
Yep, it's true.
100%. Oh, that's quotable. It really is. I think many people just think they just have to find the good deal, but really this is a process of you also then have to go sell it. And you've got to know how to sell the opportunity to the buy side. So real quick, just to kind of wrap this one up, I think my 425 comp is reasonable. And then this, if I adjusted it down, I think I would land at 425. And I would kind of, what do you got?
I'm curious where the 425 is in relativity to the freeway.
It's further away, but the 464 is close. So let me pull it up to 425. Boom.
Be mindful that the 464 also sat on the market for 120 days before selling at that price.
Thank you. You brought up exactly what I wanted to point out, because I think that's a huge part of the adjustments that potentially land us at 425. But the second and last thing I was going to say is that I think there's an additional adjustment that our buyers would probably add on to that, because 425 is going to be the tippy top. If you brought this to the absolute best and there was the right buyer out there for it, I think you would land in that 425. Likely they're going to probably argue with you and bring you down to like a 390 ARV.
Yeah.
So they're pretty much listed at ARV. Yeah. Is where they sit. So there would be some heavy negotiation here to help them understand that there's a lot of work that needs to go into this house before they get this kind of price.
Yeah, and guys, this is a little bit higher level, but if you're comping and there's no solds that support your ARV or anything like that, even if there is, what I always do is I look at what's under contract, what's pending, what's active. With the actives, I want to see what is my buyer competing with when they take this to the market for quality purposes, for price purposes. If I have ARV at 500 or at 425, I'm like, okay, cool, 425. And I go check the actives and I see an active flip that's listed at 415 and has been sitting there for 90 days. My numbers are off. This isn't the number here. Yeah. And or if I see something that's under contract at 425 and it was only on the market for 48 hours, I know, okay, that ARV could probably be bumped because clearly people are buying everything up. On the flip side, if something's pending at 425 that's been on the market for 90 days, is that really the price that they're pending at, or where are they under contract? Because that's not always something you can see, which is why pendings for me, it's very touch and go. If it's more than 60 days on market and pending, I ignore it because I don't know what they're actually under contract at.
Yeah.
Right. It's a great point. I've heard people for years saying that active and under contract properties are not comps.
That was true.
People try to die on that hill. I just don't think it's true at all. I think, well, look at an appraisal. When an appraiser does an appraisal, they include sold, active, and under contract comps in their appraisal. So if an appraisal uses it, an appraiser does, then why shouldn't the average wholesaler or investor?
I agree. I think it was true up until about 2022 when interest rates kind of started going wild, because at that point the market was very volatile and it was changing and it was up, down, up, down, up, down. So in a lot of cases, what's actively on the market, what you're competing with, was a better frame of reference than anything that sold 2 months ago. Because 2 months ago, interest rates were 2 points lower. Like that buyer may have been priced out at this point. You know what I mean? So you want to see what's actually sitting. But I do think that, in like 2020, for example, when everybody was overbidding everything and there was no getting a home at, like, you know what I mean? When it was buck wild, I think actives it didn't really matter at that point, because one, they were either going to get bid up, or two, everything was just flying off the shelves so quick. There was a plethora of data to be looked at of like, hey, 15 homes in this neighborhood sold in the last 3 months. Like, you know what I mean? So I think when the market is volatile, like it was over the last 3 years, actives become more important, and under contracts become even more important, because you could list at whatever you want to list at. That listing tells me nothing. This could just be a crazy flipper that thinks he's going to get $1 million for a house in a $500,000 neighborhood. But under contract shows me, oh no, what are real buyers actually willing to pay, and what is that number? And some agents are cool. Some listing agents, if they're under contract, you can call them and be like, hey, I'm looking at this as a comp. Where are you guys actually sitting? Some will be like, you're asking me to break the law. I'm not disclosing anything. Go away. Okay. So the pendings aren't always the best frame of reference, but it is a good at least double filter for whatever you think ARV is. If stuff is sitting at that price and it's a good flip, it's probably not the number. Or if something is under contract at that price but sat for 3 months before going under contract, you may have to reevaluate.
Yeah, I think that's the key right there. Well, it's the days on market. If it's been sitting for a long time, then they're basically not useful because you don't know what that final price is.
Exactly.
Renee.
Pulling her up here real fast, because if anybody is hanging out with us in the chat and they are in the California market and not the Colorado market, Compin California is going to start here in just a few minutes. How are you doing, Renee?
I'm excellent. How can you be bad when the sun's out every day? Come on. They call it La La Land for a reason.
102 over here. I am not pleased about it.
Listen, I jokingly say I pay weather tax. We got high taxes here. I better get something for it. The sun's out every day. So happy to see all of you always. And listen, we've got a special guest today. So Corianne and I host another show called Ask an Agent Anything. And we had a gal, her name is Sonia Ramirez, and she does small lot development here in Southern California, really specifically Los Angeles County. And so if any of you don't know how to comp small lot developments, then you want to listen up to see how she does this. It's very different. We're not necessarily going to have a bunch of screens up and doing, single family residence. You're going to hear more specifically what she's looking for, how she wants to have a communication with agents, what kind of deals she's taking down, because most of the time she's actually tearing down the property on the premises. She is not necessarily flipping it as her only exit. So once this is over, go on, follow my name, swipe on over to YouTube, and we're going to start the conversation there. So thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Renee.
Just to bounce off that, for the Colorado folks, there's a lot of development going on right now in Denver. So if an agent sends you a deal and you comp it out as is, and you're like, are you crazy? Like, there's absolutely no way. You're out to lunch. Make sure you look at it from all angles before presenting that to the agent. Because, there's neighborhoods right now where single family homes as they sit are selling for this price, but the home next door is selling for above that price because the flipper is going to tear it down and build a $2 million house right there. So, yeah, I think that's beneficial and detrimental to the market at the same time, because it's also got agents running amok with what they're listing these properties at.
Oh my gosh, it definitely does. Guys, thank you. I feel like I'm learning from just putting your two brains together. So I'm glad you guys officially met, but thank you for just dropping gems throughout this entire hour. Benson, we have a little something for our people. Do you want to announce it? Tell them what we got going on.
Well, Corianne and I are launching a new show / podcast we're going to be doing weekly. We're shooting for next week to be the inaugural event. We're going to be talking about current events. We're going to be paying attention to what's happening in the real estate news. What should you know about? What's important? What can affect your business? We're going to bring in special guests, and we're going to bring in people to talk about these things, and we're going to talk about all different strategies in real estate investing. It's going to be a really cool kind of variety show. It's going to be fun to do, and I just can't wait to spend more time with Corianne and whoever else we bring on. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. It's going to be on Wednesdays. We're still looking for a time, but keep an eye out for that on our socials as well as on our the invitations that we send out.
Yeah. And anybody that's been following us for a hot minute knows that we make a good team, because we were on Wholesaling 101 on Jamil's page for quite some time. We got to help a lot of people find and work through getting their first deal, which was really, really fun for me. And that's why I need more Benson in my life, y'all. So it's sure to be a really good, fun conversation that's going to happen probably around lunchtime every Wednesday. What you got, Austin?
I said, you're going to become a full-time YouTuber at this rate. You're all over it. I feel like you're live all day. No, but Benson, we definitely got to connect, brother. I did totally slipped my brain that you're in Colorado, but we need to do deals for sure. So
Yeah.
I'll,
Where are you
I'll put
located?
in-
Which part of
I'm in
Denver?
Cali. I'm in Cali.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, but we do deals only in Colorado. So
Awesome. Well, Corianne, feel free to share my info with Austin and let's connect.
definitely.
Awesome. If anybody needs any help with any deals they've got in Colorado, finding that buy number or finding the buyer, deals at closewithkickflip.com. Email us there and we'd be more than happy to help you out because our buyers are hungry. So with that, I say thank you all for spending some time with us and have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Bye, everyone.